Chapter 7. I inherit my brother's scooter. When my brother got sent to Rochester Borstal, I inherited his scooter, and I was pleased to ride it and drive it around. And I met my first girlfriend, called Susan, one Friday night at the Aylesbury College dance. She was only 15 years old and looked great. She had a blonde hair in a bob style, and I was wearing my navy blue mod suit, and I'd arrived on my Lambretta. I asked her to dance and later asked if I could take her home. I was feeling great when she agreed, and so I covered up my learner plate, which was just under the rear number plate, and took her home. This was the beginning of my first love. The relationship only lasted a few months. When she told me she wanted to finish the relationship, I was heartbroken, and she sought to encourage me by saying I would find someone else. I never did, and had no interest in finding anyone else. My only interest in girls after that was for sex alone, not friendship or anything else. Another Who song that expressed my emotions that I had heard at Brougham Wood was called Love is Strange. And during this time, Malcolm and I mixed with the mods in Aylesbury, and we were both 16 years old, and we began to meet with the older lads and were curious to try pet pills, purple hearts, black bombers and Dexedrine, as smoke, hashish or grass. So we began to make some inquiries where to get some. In the meantime, we would experiment smoking crushed codeine tablets and dried banana skins. This was purely to satisfy our curiosity and to experience new things. I had by that time discovered I could buy chloroform from the chemist, and this was much better than sniffing carbon tetrachloride or the glue substances that people began to experiment with. Shortly after this, Malcolm Kirkham, after trying something like this, took it into his head that he could fly on his scooter, and he broke his arm and smashed his scooter in the process, but fortunately not his head, as he was wearing a deerstalker crash helmet that he'd stolen a few days before. The names of some of the lads that we knew in Aylesbury that come to mind are Stuart Knight, Keith Guntrip, Ian Wilton, Dill Dowrick, Terry Tatton, now dead, Phil Davis, Brian Collier, Mickey Coyle, Roy Mills, Johnny James, Dave King, Jimmy Findlay, Phil Davis, and the like, all of which had one thing in common. They wanted fun and were the lads of Aylesbury. The time of writing this is the year 2000. At that time, after being sacked from the group, we began to go to a nightclub called the Banbury Gaff, where we would stay up all night taking pet pills. We used to say getting blocked, dancing and talking, and in the morning end up in a cafe eating toast before driving back to Aylesbury. Soon after this, Malcolm began to mix with the lads from Oxford, and he later was sentenced to some time in prison for some crime or other. During that time, my brother was in Borstal, and at the gaff I met Alan Dodd. He was one of my brother's partners in crime, and had escaped from Borstal, and was living on a barge in Oxford. He told me at that time he'd got a gun, and all this type of living impressed me, as it seemed rather exciting. We would spend time at the gaff talking with other lads about crimes we had done and were planning, and various schemes, and bragged and boasted about the things we'd done. From this experience of mine, I can say that there is no prevention or cure from this kind of criminal mind. Once on that route, you're on the road to serious crime. As all that I knew at that time will confirm, I can say that a girlfriend could really help someone like that avoid getting into too much trouble. It wasn't long after the great train robbery that we were finding our feet as criminals. The great train robbery had taken place in August 1963 at Brigado Bridge in Lindslade, just up the road from us in Aylesbury. The thieves had laid an ambush for the mail train running from Glasgow to Euston and stole more than £2 million worth. For 125 years the train had run uninterrupted until that night, when it was stopped by a red light in Buckinghamshire. Bruce Reynolds, who crafted the robbery, was caught in 1969 and sentenced to 10 years in jail. We were all very impressed at this crime. Shortly after my brother came out of Borstal, a form of transport was required for two. A solution to this came through my brother, who persuaded me to swap my scooter for a two-seater Isetta 350cc bubble car. I had inherited his scooter from him when he was sent to Borstal, but by now it had been renovated. I had rebuilt the engine and the scooter in the spare bedroom at home and resprayed British Racing Green. It was a Lambretta TV175cc. The fuel tank and the tool compartment was stove enamel gold. I had a dual seat with a passenger backrest with very little extras. There had been a craze whereby crash bars and wheel mirrors and wheel racks and anything made of chrome was generally attached to such machines, but not mine. I was proud of this Lambretta. It had to go to make way for the sky blue bubble car. Before this time, we had to thumb lifts to get everywhere we wanted to when the scooter was out of action. On one occasion, we were keen to go to Bedford, as the Who were playing at the Corn Exchange. We were dressed in our mod mohair suits and carried a small suitcase with us with our night things in. We got as far as Ampthill and were stuck on the corner of the Ampthill to Bedford Road, about 20 miles from Bedford. We were stuck, and Michael went into the pub to get a drink, whilst I stayed on the corner trying to thumb a lift, as my brother needed a lift as well. To my relief, and just after Michael had gone into the pub, a two-seater coupe blue Jag pulled up to offer me a lift. I rushed up to the window of the car, carrying our small suitcase, feeling very relieved that I got a lift, but at the same time anxious as my brother was still in the pub. I said to the driver quickly, cheekily, "Would you mind waiting a few moments?" The driver was fine at that. However, to my surprise and amazement, I realised who the driver was. It was Pete Townshend, the lead guitarist of The Who. Of course, that made our day. By this time, Michael had arrived, and we both squeezed into the front seat of Pete's Jag, and we told him who we were and that we were off to Bedford to their gig at the Corn Exchange. As we drove into Bedford, we stopped, and Pete asked me to ask some girls the directions to where the Corn Exchange was. They said The Who were playing there. Sure enough, they knew and pointed us to the Corn Exchange. It was a great evening. The bubble car at one time belonged to David Ness of Chiltern Street in Aylesbury, who had been given it by his brother. There's only one thing wrong with it. We had to bump start it, as the starter motor did not work. That meant we had to push it and then put it in gear and jump in it once the engine had started. In this vehicle we had many adventures because we were liberated from the two-wheel scooter and could cram 4 people in this vehicle if we wanted. Neither of us had passed our driving test to drive a normal car, but I had passed my test to drive a motorbike, and my licence allowed me to drive this 3-wheeler bubble car. We were able to carry blankets and spare clothing, etc. in the car, all in the dry. We carried all that we needed for a night out. In this case, it was ideal for catching girls. The front opened up, and it could be driven with the front door open. There's a picture of the car. All we did was to drive up to the bird we wanted to catch and stop in front of her, open up the front door and drive forward. She had no option but to fall in, and we could drive off with her in the car. It was questioned, was any girl safe with us around? We called it having a crack, and our infamy began to grow in Aylesbury among those whom we considered the lads. On one occasion Michael and I discovered a store of beer and bottled drink hidden in Aylesbury's Crown pub. We had helped ourselves to this drink, and took it upon ourselves to lay claim to it. However, one lad, Brian Sale, saw our drink, and went and told the other lads that were outside the pub. At this I saw red, and had to deal with the situation, because all the other lads went and helped themselves to our store of beer. I felt quite right to hit this Brian Sale, so that's what I did. In front of all his mates I knocked him to the ground. Whilst Michael was in Borstal, he had made for me a wooden case, like a briefcase. It was polished wood, and it had written on the side, Dr. Clark. This was for a bit of fun. However, I carried in this case a bottle of chloroform, whisky, and a fake gun. It was in fact a starter pistol that fired blanks and looked real. We used the case to frighten people, as they soon learned what was inside the case. On one occasion we went to the Crombie shop in Aylesbury, just off the Kingsway Square, intending to frighten the manager in the shop. What had happened was this. I had had a blue mohair navy suit made to measure by him. However, the jacket didn't fit properly, and even after many alterations it didn't fit properly. This was whilst my brother was in Borstal, so, on Michael's release, and him hearing about this suit, we decided to go and get our own back and frighten the manager to pieces. He was about 21 years old, and we were just a bit younger. So we went into the shop and put the Dr. Clark's case on the counter and proceeded to get the chloroform out of the case, intending to put the manager to sleep. We had no intentions but simply to frighten him. When he realised what was about to take place, he was terrified, and I had to stop Michael from knocking him out with the chloroform. On one occasion, we set off to Margate on one bank holiday. It was a custom amongst our generation of mods. We all seemed to migrate either to Yarmouth, Margate, Brighton. This was the Whitsun bank holiday. In 1966, mod and rocker riots were common. On this trip to the coast, my brother, true to form, had borrowed a 22 Webley air pistol from Pat Jones and was determined to have a good time, and he took pot shots at people, which was his way of having fun. This was not what I would have normally done, because I could recall an incident that took place on my way home from Lee Farm Junior School many years ago in Garston, when I was 12 years old. Some teenagers were having real gunfights in the wood with air pistols, and I felt how dangerous and wrong that was. I also remember the incident of Michael and the air gun that I write about in the earlier chapter under the heading Cecil and the air pistol, how wrong that was. However, here was my brother, older than I, acting fearlessly. I just went along with it, suppressing my natural cautiousness. As we passed through the various towns in London, the air pistol was used to cause alarm. As I write, I shrivel at the thought of what was done. We found it amusing to shoot at ladies' bottoms, as their reactions of shock was funny. As we passed through Lewisham, several people must have reported the mystery airgun shooter, and at least one lady was wounded. Traffic police on our route to Margate stopped us. These men briefly searched our car and found nothing suspicious and let us go. My brother had hidden the air pistol just in time, and we did not allow this close shave to stop our adventure. Persons, or girls, bathing at night were targets for our folly, and we found it amusing to see and hear a scream from a female. It was not intended to wound or hurt them or harm, but that reality was inevitable. During this weekend, we went on to Ramsgate, and again, moved with the spirit of naughtiness, decided to steal a tray of peaches from a fruit and vegetable shop. The bubble car was used as a getaway car. The shop was halfway down the hill, with houses on either side of the road. It was decided I should take the peaches and my brother to drive the getaway car. I lifted the tray of peaches, jumped in the car as it rolled down the hill, making a chug-chug-chug noise, attracting attention. This was our idea of a blag. Naturally, we were spotted and reports were made to the police, but we didn't care. Our foolishness was brought to an end when the same traffic police that had stopped us in London on the way home picked us up. I could tell from their faces, like a smirk smile, that they had it in for us. This left us with a feeling that was commonly reported in our day, all coppers are bastards. A quick search of the vehicle revealed a stolen handbag. If only I had got rid of it, I thought. Then the airgun pellets, and finally the airgun itself. That was it. We were arrested, the policeman having a smile on his face and almost laughing at us. We were charged with malicious wounding and 2 cases of stealing. A woman in Lewisham had been travelling in a sidecar and had been hit in the neck by the air pistol by my brother. I was granted bail, but brother was detained in custody. We had decided that I would say I had done the shooting and my brother was asleep. That was to get my brother off a prison sentence, and he'd already done 2 spells in detention centres and 2 years in Borstal. I had only had a probation order, and I was an apprentice. I thought I would have got off with a fine, but I was wrong. Our mum managed to obtain bail for my brother, and we appeared in Kent Quarter Sessions several months later. On recollection, I can remember a prison officer at Rochester Borstal, where I'd visited my brother a year previously, had said to me that I would be sent to Borstal next if I didn't watch out. I said, "You must be joking." I was sent to Borstal, just as he had said I would be for confessing this crime. We were charged with malicious wounding. On reflection, I think my brother was not a good brother to me. He should not have left me to do it. That is, let me take the rap. During the time that we were waiting the court appearance, we went one night to Bedford in the bubble car. On the way home, the bubble car caught light and blew up as the petrol tank was above the engine. We managed to walk to Woburn Green and decided we would have to sleep the night there. After rooting through some garages, we found an old mattress and some blankets, and there was a newly piled mound of grass on the village green. That's where we made our bed, and it was very comfortable. We put up our umbrella that we had rescued from the bubble car and slept soundly until the morning. The police, who wanted to know what we were doing, as if they couldn't see, woke us up. When we explained the bubble car had blown up, they said yes, they'd seen it down the road, so they let us go without any further questions. I arrived at work the next morning, but was soon to be dismissed because I was due to appear in court, and they were not prepared to trust me any more. This was the last of the bubble car, and once we got it towed home, my parents were able to sell it when we were in prison. Once my boss, Mr. Sale, found out that I'd been caught by the police, he gave me the sack, and so I had no job and was about to appear in court on charges of malicious wounding and carrying a firearm without a licence. So, in revenge, I had a plan. I knew where the money and the takings of the shop were stored overnight. So shortly after this, I instructed my apprentice, Pat Jones, to break into the shop where I used to work, and he was to take the money. His task was to climb on the top of the garage roof, lift the tiles off the roof of the shop, and break in through the loft, then the ceiling, go into the rear toilet, take the money from the cupboard. A great plan, so we thought. There was only one trouble, though. The money bag had not been placed in the spot where I'd instructed Pat Jones to go. So he did the job and did not get caught, but we got no money. Whilst Michael was in Borstal, he had made for me a wooden case, like a briefcase. It was polished wood, and it had written on the side, Dr. Clark. This was for a bit of fun. However, I carried in this case a bottle of chloroform, whisky, and a fake gun. It was in fact a starter pistol that fired blanks and looked real. We used the case to frighten people, as they soon learned what was inside the case. On one occasion we went to the Crombie shop in Aylesbury, just off the Kingsway Square, intending to frighten the manager in the shop. What had happened was this. I had had a blue mohair navy suit made to measure by him. However, the jacket didn't fit properly, and even after many alterations it didn't fit properly. This was whilst my brother was in Borstal, so, on Michael's release, and him hearing about this suit, we decided to go and get our own back and frighten the manager to pieces. He was about 21 years old, and we were just a bit younger. So we went into the shop and put the Dr. Clark's case on the counter and proceeded to get the chloroform out of the case, intending to put the manager to sleep. We had no intentions but simply to frighten him. When he realised what was about to take place, he was terrified, and I had to stop Michael from knocking him out with the chloroform.